Hello, I'm Sharon Blevins, and I would like to welcome you to an interview with Pixie Jarvis. She's studied trauma for some time and has worked with equine assisted living and activities for quite a long time, and I've enjoyed her company and her insight into trauma, and you're going to find this a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a subject that we found very fascinating, and I think you will too. We're going to talk about fawning today. So I welcome Pixie Jarvis. Hi, Pixie. Welcome.
Good to see you again. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, yes. It's wonderful to talk with you again. I could talk with you all day. But we won't put everyone through that long. We'll try to keep it a little bit shorter than that.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to talk with you today about a subject we've both stumbled upon, you obviously long before me. I had never heard of fawning. And, when it comes to trauma care, we have talked a little bit about people pleasing. And when you mentioned that is connected to something called fawning, which is something connected to trauma, I was just fascinated, and I know our audience would be fascinated. And we're just going to have a conversation about how this all connects and what we can take from that, what can help us and encourage us in our daily lives. So can you tell us a little bit about what fawning is?
Sure. Most people have heard, and that's what I'd always heard too, of the trauma response of fight, flight, and freeze. I always heard about that. But I was somewhere part of a message board, the trauma informed board, where I continually go to learn, and I was listening to people talk about the subject of fawning, and I never heard of that before. But fawning is people pleasing, and it's conflict avoidance. So I just started looking at that part of it, and like with trauma response, we're all wired a little differently. For me, being a horse person, I guess that's why I relate to them. I'm probably more of a flight person first. Like if I had a choice to avoid something like something dangerous, it would be to flee right away if I could get out of it. Yeah, and but sometimes we're in situations where we can't escape, get out. So next, for me, tends to move towards the freeze response, which freeze, like ultimately for humans, animals too, would be to disassociate and just basically check out. But on that kind of continuum towards that could be fawning, meaning I can't get away, so I'm going to try to do whatever I can to make it okay with the threat that I feel. And so I go into that. So that's called fawning behavior. And then, of course, we think of fight. And like for me, I tend to go to fight last. I avoid conflict at all costs. That's something that I have done for a long time. But I'm understanding myself and why I'm wired that way. Some people, fight is their first thing to do. Like they go to fight immediately. So we're all a little different depending on, I think, just how we're wired. Because we've talked before, trauma in our body can even show up in utero, like when you're developing the womb, and then as you go on and experiences you go through your life, kind of can dictate how your nervous system responds to different things. So yes, fawning is definitely something, now that I'm understanding it more, is something that I use a lot in my life to deal with situations, and understanding now the level of what I was doing. I don't want to do that because we can get into that, how it's not actually good for my relationships.
So it sounds like the early experiences we've had, maybe as children or very young people, in our body and our mind are developing, and we are taking on part of our environment, forming patterns, growing, developing, and some of the stress or the responses that we learned early on that work for us to help us make it through things have become part of who we are later as adults. And we don't always recognize that. And, one of the funny parts, it's really not funny, but just when you've talked about this, it's really touched a chord with me, because I've never really understood it from that perspective. But, and I think a lot of people relate to things like this. But as a child, I grew up with just a mom and dad who were older, and I would call my dad a kind of a grumpy farmer. And he would, I didn't have much of a relationship with him, at least not a good one. And he was just brought up that way himself. He didn't know any better. And I remember having to be around him on the farm, at the barn, in different places, in our home, of course. And my mother was quite afraid of him, and she was always trying to please him. And his anger would come out quite often. And I would walk on eggshells around him. I was very worried about making him upset with me and how that would go afterwards. So I just know, once you mentioned all this, that's why I've struggled for a lifetime with anxiety. And I've had to admit as an adult that it's part of the way I deal with life, the things around me all the time. I'm always on edge. And I remember being in that situation where I had to be the referee between my parents. I had to make sure that I was protecting my mother and that didn't upset my father. And always, if he would become angry, I'd try to calm it down. I'd try to, ease everything. And as an adult in my profession, I would get in front of, get in meetings or in front of people. And I thought I was pretty good at bringing conflict down and easing the tensions. But now I see why I do that. It's because that's kind of inbred in me. And I'm worried about it getting out of control. I can't deal with that. It's scary. So does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I would say too, like for myself, I'm realizing, we all have been through things in our lives. And, I know we talked last time about the spiritual side, as I realized I can't change the past and I can't change the things that happened to, do some of that wiring in me. But today I have the opportunity to take maybe the good parts, so for me, people pleasing, like I don't want to become the other extreme and just not care about people, I don't want to go the other extreme either. So what I've realized is, like even for me, I think probably there was some potential already wired in me to want to help others, like just having that helping nature that God created us to be. Some events or things that happened in our lives that got some of that wiring, and I won't even say, I've heard this recently too, that I won't even say it's maladaptive, because you're here today.
Yeah.
You survived that. So instead of looking back and like having that idea of like, oh gosh, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? It did it. Your brain, that survival part of your brain did for you what it needed to do. It kept you safe in your childhood. It protected you. So so like I look at that in my own life, things where I did certain things to survive a situation. My brain protected, so that's what anybody that's been through things, if you're here today, you survived it, and that's what it was meant to be at that time. But for me, at that, like you're saying too, you get to a place in your adulthood that you really can think, some of this isn't serving me anymore, like, so certain relationships. So like for me, how fawning could be problematic in relationships is if I'm continually adapting and changing who I am, like say to please you, like Sharon's only going to allow me in her life if I do X, Y, Z. Well, I'm never truly showing up as myself. Therefore, you never really get to know me for who I really am. And like I didn't see that before, because in the trauma field, they talk about, felt sense of safety, that you see me, you hear me, you get me, you feel me. But if I never let you truly see me, I'll never feel seen. And so there's like this little bit of a disconnect in me that like always kind of not feeling true connection with some of my, whatever, friendships, family, community, romantic relationships. So like with my husband, we have both been on this journey, ourselves of like understanding our past and how it impacted our marriage. We had lots of troubles early on in our marriage. We're in a much better place today, but we both have to do a lot of self-growth work. But so like that thing of finding relationships where I feel safe to be who I am, and that I don't have to continually be like this chameleon that adapts, to make you happy, or that I fit in with you, that I find my own, who am I today? Who do I want to be as far as like in my relationships, and not feeling like I have to continually, change.
Yeah, I kind of regret that I did not understand this as a 20-year-old. It would have changed my life, because I remember being in graduate training to do therapy and group therapy especially, and the teacher was guiding us, and he talked about how we behave differently in different situations, and I mentioned that I don't know why I do this, but I'm one person with this group, and I'm another person with that group, and I don't even know who I am, and it was, and people would tell me I'm a different person around someone. And then I know I was trying to please everybody. Yes. And sometimes I still do that, but with age comes a little bit more, maybe maturity and perspective. And now I realize that, why am I doing all that? It's getting a little old trying to please everybody. It's just not possible, for one, but I don't know who I am if I don't just be me. And I have finally started to be more and more me, and less of everyone else, what they want. And it's just that I've made decisions for a lifetime that were built around trying to make everyone happy with whatever I was that day. Whoever I had to be, I was going to be, like you just said, a chameleon. You got it right.
And it's, like you're saying, it's exhausting. And I mean, there are times where, like, say, how I am in my home with my husband versus my work environment. I mean, we all have to do a little bit of that, just, like in a professional environment, I may act a certain, but to me, where it starts becoming problematic for me, absolutely, myself, is when it's beyond that. It's not about me showing up in whatever capacity, the role that I'm choosing to be in, like if I'm working, doing a job or something, but it's beyond that. It's more that I'm willing to, even maybe my personal, that compass of my morals,
exactly,
the dignity, and I catch myself throwing some of that away just to fit in, or even if I'm not participating in a behavior, I may be standing there, not voicing anything differently, not walking away. I might be seeming like I agree with something that's happening in front of me that I'm really internally, I'm like, oh, I'm not okay with this. But I'm scared to either voice it or just say, I'm sorry, guys, I gotta go, or whatever. It's like I stay there in it, because what it was is I was more fearful to be, shunned or not accepted. And I mean, even because I know with you working with kids, I mean, that is something obviously with the peer pressure, but I realized that followed me into my adulthood, that I still had that internal pressure that for me to be loved and accepted by others, that I just really, and I used to, you were taught, I mean, I relate to so much. It's like I used to consider that a strength. It's like, in any situation, I'll fit in. Like I thought that was a strength.
Oh, I'm so good at this.
Yeah. And again, again, it's that line of knowing what amount of that is okay. Like, I'm like you, I want to be the peacemaker and make everything okay. And I mean, we need that in the world, but at the same time, not just when I take it to the extreme. And so
I think that's what I've done, and I've taken it a lot further than I should.
Yeah, it's like just sacrificing something about us to do that.
Yeah. And people pleasing is sometimes going to interrupt your relationship with God, your spirituality, your growth as an individual. I've worked so hard at trying to make sure no one's upset with me or upset around me, that when maybe sometimes it's best to air it out. I've let things go forever that upset me or bother me and put myself as, the quiet one that slips back and just doesn't want to ruffle it up, make it a big deal, and till it is such a big deal that it's gone out of control. So I should have learned long ago, but at least I know now that this is probably not healthy.
I'll tell you what, someone told me, don't should on yourself.
Yeah. That's a good advice.
We're all doing the best we can until we know something different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. And it's like, well, in that part too, that not being who I am, we talked before, the last time we talked about boundaries. And so like part of that issue is not having boundaries, because if I'm continually trying to meld to the people around me, then it's like I don't even know what my boundaries are, because I'm continually changing them to fit everyone else instead of knowing what's okay for me. But because of that, like you're saying, I might do that well, here's another big sign that, for anybody listening, that, fawning's an issue, is that I would get internally resentful a lot. Like I would, do this, and I couldn't say hard. I have really struggled to say no, because again, I wanted to please everybody. And people want to hear yes when you ask. So I would find myself saying yes to things, but then I would be stretched so thin, because like you said, it's exhausting trying to please everybody. So then I would be resentful towards the people who asked, but like it was me that said yes. So like trying to be accountable for my side of it, learning that. So today, what I tell myself, it's my nature to want to help. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just to do it in a healthy way. So today, when people ask me to do things, if I know, like I've learned my limits and how much can I show up well and what I can't. So I tell myself, if I say no, it's because I said yes over here, and I want to show up well over here. And if I focus on that, because I'm just accepting this is part of my nature, so it helps me to see I said yes over here, and I really want to say yes well. So internally, I just tell myself, I don't explain that to the person, but I'm just saying internally, how I help myself through it. It's like, I've got to say no here because I said yes over here, and that matters to me. And then I remind myself, when I say no, guess what? That lets someone else come in and have that opportunity. Whereas if I say yes to all these and don't do them, I just kind of sort of do them. That's not good either. I mean, that's not showing up right. So like, let someone else that has the time show up and do that. And, if someone's upset that I can't, I now know that's their issues. They're not my issues.
That was my next question for you, really, is what do you do about that desire to people please? What do you do if someone out there is saying, that's me, or I can see how I've been that way, and I think everybody to some extent does try, of course, to please people. There's only a few people I know who don't. What can we do to soften that? Like use the boundaries, like you're saying. What else would you say might be helpful to help us, not be such people pleaser?
I'll go back to the trauma response that we're feeling. So like when we feel, and this is where I'm continually learning, and I'm trying to incorporate this more in my life. I shared last time that I didn't understand this trauma response is that the first line of how this works is body sensations. Like I used to try to think my way out of it. So like I would, in my head just try to figure. But now I notice, what do I feel in my body? Like that's an indicator for me. Like say someone comes and asks me something. If my internal alarm system starts going off, like my heart starts racing, I'm feeling, I notice that it's like, like something internally is going on with me. What's this really about? Again, this is something that I'm just talking about to myself that I notice. So if my response, if I find myself saying yes because I feel dysregulated inside and I don't want to make that person upset, okay, that's that old pattern. That's the old activated, like that old pattern's being activated. If I'm like, yes, and it's my yes is because it might, I want my yes to be like, oh, that sounds like something that I could really get behind in my heart. Yeah, I want to do that. Versus internally, I'm like, heart racing, scared, sweaty, whatever. But you think about what you were talking about your past, and I think in my past, what triggered in my body felt so uncomfortable, because that's what happens. We feel these sensations. It's so uncomfortable. We don't like how it feels. We just want to get rid of the discomfort. So sometimes to just get rid of the discomfort is to say yes, because then that person's happy and they were like, and everything's
like me now. Yes.
But really long term, it's not okay, because now I've stressed myself out more. So it gave me a release or a relief in the moment.
Yes.
But it actually caused me more problems. So if I can just remember when I start feeling that in the body, that old response, for me, it's like the pause button, it may be saying, let me think about that and get back with you, or I can literally walk away, take some time, look at it, and like, okay, do I really want to do that, or was I really feeling like I felt that old obligation or the fear of conflict? Like if it's coming from that internal place of I just don't want conflict, let's make it go away. That's not how I want to say yes before, because that's what continually caused me troubles in relationships, because I couldn't get that separated out and understand.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's just like developing this blog and doing interviews. It's something I would never, ever have imagined myself doing at one time. It involves being vulnerable and putting myself out there, and people will criticize, judge, and you know how social media is. It's you're wide open.
Yeah.
There's no way you can people please on that platform, really. So I have tried to just do what I believe is in keeping with who I am, and presenting a message that I don't know everything, and I admit it all, that I am someone who's been through things, and I've learned hopefully from mistakes I've made, and it's just we're all going through this life journey together, and we want to help each other, and I wanted to encourage people. That's why I developed it. And if I just reach one person, and I know that you feel that way too, if we can help someone and help them feel a little bit better in the world, then we're done. We're doing our job.
That's right. And there's strength in numbers. So like you being willing to do this encouraged me to do this. And so we're here together doing this. So like even just sitting here right now with you, we're having this world of having to do Zoom. So I know we're not face to face, but still I feel a sense of connection to you. And because of that, I have more courage to show up and do this, because you're right. Like there may be some people listening to this right now and they're like, but like I'm here, right? Because it's like, I know you have that desire to help, and I do too, as far as like helping our community and helping people around us. And knowing that there's others out there that want to help like that too strengthens me. So I do absolutely believe there's strength in numbers. So I'm very grateful that you were doing this and encouraging all of us to show up like this.
Yeah. So the message is to be authentic.
Yes. Yeah.
And tune into your inner state of regulation, making sure that you are comfortable with the things you take on and the way you respond to people. Make it be who you really are.
Yes. There might be one other thing I'll throw out real quick to you. Also being aware, like I know whatever we've shared today, we both are comfortable and knew it was okay to share that. I will throw that out there too as a people pleaser. One thing I did in the past is I would overshare, because I was so eager for your approval.
Yeah.
I would share things that were really vulnerable, but I wasn't protecting my heart. So like today, like you're someone who's safe to me. So like, since we're doing this live, like in an interview format, I shared the amount that I felt comfortable, but I know I can share even more personal details with you versus there's other people now. I'm like, that person wouldn't be safe for me. So like, that was part of this journey of the fawning and people pleasing. Become more aware who earns the right to hear my story, like the details of my story or whatever.
Yeah, you have the right to keep your story to yourself and let it out only when you're comfortable.
That's right, because it kind of perpetuates that victim mode. When I overshare, then unsafe people would use it to manipulate me.
That's right.
We have that cycle, it's like if I'm already a people pleaser and then someone takes stuff I shared to manipulate me more to do more, I would just fall into that cycle. So So that's just one other thing I want to throw out there. It's, also take care of yourself, find safe people to have these conversations with as you grow, work through some of this.
Yes. Well, I really appreciate this. This is so eye-opening.
Me too. I mean, I'm on that journey with you. I'm learning too.
And that's the message.
Yeah.
We are on a journey, and we don't have it figured out. We probably will never figure it out.
I said I'll be working on myself for the day I
die. Yes, we will. So, and that's what we want everyone to do, is work on becoming more and more who you are, and share that with others, and be true to yourself. And if you see connections with the past, do some research or continue to dive into this topic if you want. It can only make you better, but don't worry about it too much, right?
Right.
We want to live today,
and
plan for tomorrow in a positive way. So encouraging each other. So all right. Well, thank you very, very much, Pixie. I so appreciate your time.
You too. Thank you for all your feedback.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.